Hello everyone, welcome to Tarnished Bronze. Today we have the Eric's Oeuvre spin-off. Like every good comic series, Tarnished Bronze has its own spin-off series. And in this we're going to be looking at Erik Larsen throughout his career. He's had a really big influence on what sort of comics I like. I really love his Savage Dragon character. I really love the Savage Dragon storyline, and I really love the Savage Dragon as a thing. So we're going to be getting in that on future episodes of Eric's Oeuvre. But here I just wanted to delve into something that we haven't necessarily kind of covered on the main channel, and that is uh, Punisher. And so Punisher is kind of from the Bronze Age, but the Punisher series doesn't really start up until the late 80s. And here we have issue 21. Mike Barron is doing the story. Erik Larsen is doing the art. He'll do a run on this. This, I think, is after his run on Doom Patrol, but before he starts on Amazing Spider-Man. So it's in the hinterland of kind of like first sort of Marvel DC gigs through to becoming that sort of superstar Spider-Man artist and the image stuff. And this is kind of like the connective tissue, I think, between that. And so Mike Barron, as I said, writes the story. Erik Larsen does the penciling, and Scott Williams, who most people know from inking Jim Lee, does the inks on this. And it really gives Erik Larsen a very different sort of complexion to his artwork. And in some cases, it really works for him, especially in these earlier kind of issues. And then I feel towards the end, he outgrows it. But definitely, this is a kind of interesting mix between that highly commercial and highly stylistic extremes that Erik Larsen will go for. As usual on Tarnished Bronze, we kind of get into the first Mike Barron I had would have probably been a Dark Horse issue of Nexus. The first Erik Larsen I had would have been a Spider-Man issue, I think Return or Revenge of the Sinister Six. I think I had that issue off the stands. And Scott Williams would probably be X-Men 1, but they all kind of combine here, and you can see Frank Castle, the best side part in vigilantism, is on the cover. It's not a bad cover. It's definitely a pretty striking image. And notice the tough wear on the shorts. They're really, really good. Um, I just only recently kind of got this. My first Punisher issue, I had the misfortune of picking up one of the Marvel Knights Punishers off the stands, not the good ones with Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon, but the one where Punisher becomes an angel. So that's a bit of a shame. But later I did get into the Max series, and before that the Marvel Knight series. And so I kind of like the Punisher as not a Marvel character, just as maybe in the Marvel universe, but sort of superhero adjacent, as the kids all say now. Um, so it gets straight into the story here. I kind of like this sort of multi-panel introduction. For whatever reason, maybe these Punisher issues are all dedicated to someone. This one's dedicated to Denny O'Neil, who, this is 1990 or so, or 1989. He's not dead. He works at DC. He's been working at DC for a long time now, being the Batman editor and writer. So I don't know if Mike Barron dedicated an issue to everybody all the time, but that just sort of struck me. But here we have a pretty good cityscape, pretty good Frank Castle, pretty moody. There's the newsstand there, kind of working really good. Punisher is trying to uncover some dodgy dealings with some people in the sort of boxing promotion game. So one of these guys is kind of a little bit of a Don King analog. And so here Punisher goes into or Frank rather, goes into the gym, and he's trying to link up with one of the fighters who beat one of the fighters, BJ, who is promoted by our kind of villain of the piece. and you can already see that it's highly detailed. Erik Larsen always does a good sense of space in his works. I don't know if this is a straight rip from Superman versus Muhammad Ali, but like wrestling and boxing gives a really good kind of visceral and kinetic sort of centerpiece for the action in a comic book. And more specifically, the ring markers are really where you kind of earn your crust as a cartoonist. So I think that he does pretty well there. The crowd is kind of varied. The poses are always good. He really is great at getting sort of fun camera angles. None of Erik Larsen's talking heads are boring, and that's a big thing that I don't think enough people appreciate. And so here again, we've got conversations, but we've got kind of a very busy conversation. We've got a fight happening. This is the promoter here with the sort of bouffant fringe. And then Frank is looking pretty fit and athletic for a sort of guy in his 40s, which I guess is par for the course for all of his training and whatnot. But yeah, once again, even with these Liefeldian speed lines, he's up against the ropes. It does look good. I'm not sure Frank even gets a punch in. Anyway, the main kind of thing is we get this action, and it's obeying the rules of television or the rules of filmmaking. The same guys on the left in each panel and the right in each panel. You don't get confused. It's just really sort of good work. But nonetheless, Frank taking the lumps gets him an in with the trainers at the gym and an in with BJ the fighter. And look at all this detail here, the tiling, the lockers, the stools, and so on and so forth. Everything is just really has a sense of place. These aren't figures just acting in nothingness. These are people planted in real life. There's a fore, a middle, and a background, a fore, a middle, and a background on all of these panels. They're really well crafted, good use of shadows as well. It just really brings a mood. These are the first Punisher issues that I've read in a long time that don't have a really kind of uh, a really sort of crime and thriller aspect of them. It's kind of like Frank Castle is a bit of a sort of Jason Bourne type character in those Garth Ennis things, very down to earth. Most of these Punishers from this sort of era, though, are way more bombastic, but Larson is kind of like bringing all this down to earth, and to his credit, Mike Barron makes a good story kind of hum along. Anyway, our heroes become fast friends, and BJ invites him out for a drink where we meet up with Iris. And Iris is kind of conflicted because she works for both the promoter and she's also BJ's girlfriend. And so there's a bit of sort of conflict about should he be out and about and so on and so forth. But the major thing is that BJ is not having any hard drinks. He's just there to hang out with Frank and to kind of pass the time and to hopefully, just get out of the gym for a little bit and relax. And once again, for the flack that these image sort of people get, the details here, the bar, the kind of crummy ceilings that are in these places, the reflection, pseudo reflection on the glass behind the bar, the fact that it's got patrons in it, the garbage strewn streets, the fact that it has six panels. It's quite busy, but they're not six sort of rectangular panels. They're shaking it up. So Larson is really quite playful. And so this thing with Iris, BJ, Frank, and the promoter are going to all sink into some sort of kerfuffle later, and they will all come into conflict. And there'll be no conflict, no drama without conflict. So the main thing is that one of the promoter's business dealings has gone south. Frank is trying to follow the money, and to follow the money, he needs to follow Iris, and so he's kind of doing a reconnaissance and a sort of break and enter job to get the information of where he needs to go in order to follow this trail of corruption. But as we see here, great sort of cartooning, but she's alert to it. She stabs him with a syringe full of a sedative. Frank is on his feet and he's basically down and out while she kind of gets herself together and heads out the door. And we've got some pretty classic Erik Larsen boudoir shots. We've got the lingerie that he seems the frilly with the sort of French cut there. So it's a pretty classic. Any fans of Savage Dragon will know that that's kind of the way that he draws this, as well as the Mary Jane Watson kind of stuff too. So he's kind of got a type, I guess, that he later shapes up Erik Larsen and his haircuts for females and so on and so forth. So fortunately, Microchip has given him a bit of an antidote, so he knows that there's some stuff in that, and so he's kind of prepared. But following on from this, the promoter comes and they have a fight with Frank and the promoter, who is surprised that Frank is not down and out. So he must have an amazing constitution. While he watches the fight, I don't know if you can see in the image, he turns the fight on, and BJ is obviously poisoned in the fight, and the promoter is going to collect a lot of money because obviously the favorite did not win that. And we get to this climax. Frank manages to stop the promoter, but he realizes that it's all part of a massive scheme from this nefarious group that looks like it's coming out of somewhere in Kansas. And so that sort of promotes the rest of this whole run that Erik Larsen will do on Punisher. And it involves going into this sort of training camp for ninjas slash survivalists that I'm sure the Minutemen kind of Unabomber stuff is going on. And it also then goes into Japan. So we get the tech as well as the feudal sort of side of Japan. Kind of a globe-trotting adventure for Punisher. Pretty good stuff. This is a really readable comic. This is a comic that I actually had a lot of fun. I was kind of like dreading it. I was hoping that it would be good, but I was just sort of out there for the Larsen artwork. But it turns out that 5-issue run is actually pretty fun. So we might cover some of it later on. But yeah, definitely get out there and try some of these early Larsen works. I know he's very famous for the Spider-Man stuff, but this is kind of that in-betweening stage where he was doing the Doom Patrol team book, and then he started on this issue of Punisher, and Mike Baron does a pretty good issue of Punisher. So we might leave it there. That's our episode of Erik's Oeuvre for the day. We are Tarnished Bronze, and you can like, follow, subscribe, and find similar content on our channel page.